Hello, welcome to another episode of Varsity360. You can tell it's a special edition today. Columbian sports editor Micah joined by Wochnick, and our special guest, Camas girls basketball coach Scott Thompson, or as we can now refer you to as state champion basketball coach
It's got
Scott
a great
Thompson.
ring to it.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having me. I'm a fan of the podcast, and I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, before we go into your team's excellent weekend that ended in the Class 4A state championship, first of all, a shout out to our sponsor, First Pacific Financial, allowing us to use the First Pacific Financial studio here. They support the show, they support high school athletics, and by extension, they support the community at large. So thank you to First Pacific Financial. But so Scott, quite the weekend, ending in the state championship win over Gonzaga Prep on Saturday. Just what memories kind of stand out to you now that you've had a few days about the immediate aftermath and celebration of that victory?
Yeah, well, it was an absolute thrill. From the second the buzzer went off all the way to the locker room celebration. I mean, it was just filled with incredible moments. I think for me, the one that really stood out was after we win, they kind of put you out on the center court, and the WIA comes in and takes pictures of the team. They give them the state championship banner, and they give them the gold ball. There was a moment right after they got done where the girls turned around and addressed the crowd. And, you know, the crowd was absolutely amazing. The community support that we had that night was just phenomenal. And the crowd erupted, and the girls were holding the gold ball up. And I mean, I got chills in that moment. And I think that's the one that sticks with me the most.
I think one of the moments that I'll remember is seeing a photo of the sign that your student section was holding up that said unfinished, and then the U and the N crossed out finished. This had been a long time coming. I guess not only with the girls, you know, having grown up together, but my question is, how soon after coming so close last year and falling in the state championship game, how soon did your focus shift to this year?
Well, I mean, I think more than anything, we had to give the girls some time off. They wanted to get right to work. They were ready Sunday morning to get back in the gym so that they could be here. And I think today is actually 1 year from the day that we lost to Eastlake. And it just motivated them. Now, there's a story, too, behind that unfinished sign.
Okay.
That is Sadie's sign, one of our ball girls. She's a local girl that goes to Woodburn Elementary. And she's been our ball girl all year, one of our two ball girls. She brought that sign. It said unfinished, and she brought a marker. And as soon as the game was over, she crossed out the U and the N, put a line underneath finished, and then that sign ended up getting passed around. And there's just some phenomenal pictures of that sign. One of them was Sadie holding it up in the crowd. And it's. I think we need to laminate it. We need to frame it. We need to put it in the locker. Someday Sadie's probably going to be playing for Camas High School. I'd love to have that sign in there for when she gets there.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, let's go into the origin story of this team, and especially this senior class. When did they really start playing together?
I think just through growing up in a small community, they started playing together at a really young age. I mean, I know Riley and Addie were playing rec basketball in like the second grade together. But it wasn't just basketball. It was volleyball. It was softball. It was just a variety of sports. And so you've got connections on this team that go way back to the early years of elementary, and it's through a variety of sports. And so I just think, you know, that just helped build the chemistry. It helped, you know, kind of that homegrown feel that we have, that everybody kind of grew up together. We weren't they weren't all playing on the same team in the second grade, but they were finding connections through various sports and doing different things.
And so what do you do as a coach to kind of maximize that chemistry? You know, you obviously have girls that know each other, but you know, sometimes, you know, you gotta make sure personalities click and everything. How much of that falls on you as a coach, and how much is organic from the girls?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's a good question. I think for us as a coaching staff, what we wanted to do is just put them in places to grow. whether it's team dinners, whether it's a trip to DC or anything in between. We just try to do a lot of fun things, but it's really up to them. It's up to them to make sure that they're inclusive with each other. It's up to them to show that they truly care about each other. And for the last 2 years, this group has been as connected as any group I've ever been around. And they just make everything easy. And I know for other coaches out there that are listening, I mean, we've dealt with team dinners before that, you know, some group, you know, a couple girls go over here, a couple girls go over here, or they start to click up and things like that. Or maybe they don't pick up after themselves after the dinner or things like that. And I'm like, this team checks every box. They do everything right. They're so easy to travel with. They're so easy to just give them freedom, give them space, give them opportunities, because every single time we do that, they end up together, they end up having fun, and they end up doing it the right way. And so, yeah, they've just been a joy from you know, the last 2 years have been really just a dream come true.
You know, before we go on, let's make sure people know who we're talking about. We're going to shout out the 5 seniors that you had that played super big roles: Addison Harris, Reagan Jameson, Parker Mayers, Brianna Forbes, Riley Sands, supported by an excellent junior class as well: Kira Thompson, Sophie Buzzard, Kendall Mayers, to name a few. And so I guess having a senior group that's so tight and building up to this, you know, what was that sense of relief like when you saw that group that had been singularly focused on this goal accomplish it and be able to? I read that you had a little bit of a surprise for them that you gave them afterwards.
Yeah, well, there was some relief there too. Yeah, I think that the weight on the shoulders definitely got a little lighter, because it no matter how we shook it. I mean, I think a win this season was just being able to coach this group. I think the win was them getting to be around each other all year. I mean, this was a special year no matter what happened on Saturday night. But no matter how we shook out like on-court success, it really came down to that night. And we never ran from that as a group. We always kept that as the goal, and we always kept that as a motivating factor for our season. And so, yeah, to win it, I mean, it was, you know, it was very magical. It was accomplishing our only on-court goal that we had this year. And so, yeah, it was very special.
You know, Meg, you were there covering the tournament. Take us through just the surroundings, the environment. What did you observe?
A whole lot of magic is really what it was. And it just, I mean, on court wise, it was just an absolute show, really, that from the impressive 41-point victory in the state quarterfinals over Tahoma to that amazing first half show that you all put on against Gonzaga Prep. You know, I think of players like Reagan Jameson, who I remember 2 years ago. It was the Reagan Jameson show when you all placed 4th for your first state trophy. And that was kind of the talk of Class 4A at the time was, hey, this is the start of Camas and you guys are going to be for real. And then 2 years later, having a player like Reagan step up in those big moments once again and scoring 15 of her 17 points in that state championship game. And that was one of the questions I asked her post-game, was kind of rising to the moment when the lights shine brightest. So you guys did not disappoint whatsoever. You guys put on a show, and it was definitely a masterpiece of art.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Coach, my cousin Justin Tigner, we call him Coach Tiggs. We were kind of in the lead up and having a meeting, and he had mentioned when we play with joy, other teams are doomed, and that was his exact quote. And we thought, okay, we're going in with like our offensive goals and our defensive goals for this week, and kind of what we want to define us at the state tournament. And so we decided one of our 3 offensive goals was just to play with joy. And we're a few minutes into the Tahoma game, and Reagan's going left-handed behind the back and in the open court and just painted Riley for a wide-open layup. And as a coaching staff, we kind of collectively looked at each other and we're like, that's playing with joy right there. So she really cut loose. It was so fun to watch her play. That first half of the state championship game was just she just had that gas pedal down, and she was attacking the rim. She was just trying to do anything she could to help her team win. And I think, if you look at her tournament specifically, she's like the way that this team plays and the way that they're connected to each other. I mean, you see it with Reagan. She took a back seat a little in the Sumner game offensively, but still comes up with 9 rebounds and 3 steals, plays a little point guard that night, which she doesn't usually do, and did anything she could to help her team win. And so if we need her to pass, she's a great passer. If we need her to block shots, she'll go block some shots for us. We needed her to score some points Saturday night, and she went and scored some points for us, and it was really fun.
Something that was different with you guys this season that I know we've talked about on this podcast is playing those national caliber tournaments, facing some of the top teams in the country. When did you start fielding those calls after last season ended? And did you feel that this team was ready to kind of make that next step in playing in some of those national caliber tournaments?
Yeah, I think we were kind of balancing the idea of going to all these. We knew it was going to cost a lot of money. We knew all the travel and all that stuff. We started getting calls in March last year. And so we kind of had to put this schedule together. We had a parent meeting. We sat down and said, this is how much it's going to cost. Should we go for it? But ultimately, when it came to deciding if we were going to go or not, if we were going to play all these teams, I feel like losing in the state title game maybe takes the fear of losing away. Mm-hmm. Like how could you ever fear losing when you had the ultimate, like, get your heart ripped out of your chest loss? They always say, I've heard it all the time, that second place is the hardest trophy to walk out of the dome with. I've heard it for my entire coaching career and even as a player. And until you actually experience it, like you don't even want to bring that trophy home. And we're all incredibly proud of it now. But in the moment, it is really hard to walk out of that dome with the second place. And so when we were fielding that schedule, we're like, we don't fear losing anymore. And I think that's part of the reason this team was so good, through adversity, because we had experienced the ultimate adversity, and it didn't break us, and it made us stronger. And so when we put together that national schedule, we knew we'd probably take some losses along the way. We knew that these teams were really, really good, but we also thought it would make us better. We thought it would help us grow, and we thought it would help us win a state championship once we got in state. And so ultimately, we just feel like the girls were really resilient, and they didn't fear losing, and losing wouldn't break them. And so we did everything we could to help them grow.
One moment in that state championship game that I think exemplifies that resilience is you get off to a great start. You're up by 20 in the first half. Third quarter comes along, Gonzaga Prep's shooter gets hot. They cut it down to 12, and a team that had been leading all game, that had been, focusing on this moment and this state championship opportunity, might have kind of tensed up a little bit. What does it say about your team that they kind of, took it on the chin, but shook it off, steadied themselves, and ended up keeping Gonzaga Prep at double digits the rest of the way?
That's where you saw our experience, and that's where you saw, our girls that have been to the state tournament 3 consecutive years. They've been there, they've done that, and they didn't get rattled. It felt like to me that tensions were starting to get a little high. I felt like the bench was complaining to the refs a little bit more than they usually do, and we were getting aggravated at some of our misses. Third quarter, we got good shot after good shot after good shot. I mean, we have a shot evaluator, and we're only shooting 10s and 9s. And so these are shots that we usually make a very high percentage of, and they just weren't going in. And I remember at the end of the third quarter, kind of everybody coming over, and it felt like it was a really, I wouldn't say defeated, but it was a frustrated group of girls. And, I wanted to try to make it as light as possible. And so I looked at them and I kind of said, hey, that was as good of a quarter as Gonzaga Prep can play. That was pretty special. They really hit some tough shots. And I go, and honestly, that was about as bad of a quarter as we could play. We got good shots and missed them. And I go, and even if that happens again, we're still going to win a state championship. Because I was kind of looking at the score and saying, well, they just +8 at us or +9 to us, and we're still up 13. And so just try to kind of bring some levity so they could all look around and kind of gain some confidence. But really, to me, what happened in the fourth quarter is just defensively, we're so good. The girls did such a good job of Coach Griff wanted us to go back into a half court man. He's kind of our defensive guru. Me and him just argued with each other for a little bit, and then we said, okay, let's go half court man. And so the girls kind of, I mean, one of the things that this team does better than any team I've ever coached is they can suck the life out of a fourth quarter. This is like several times in the making that we will just like take all of the energy and deplete a team in the fourth quarter and turn it into an incredibly low scoring fourth quarter for both teams. We'll walk the ball up the court, we'll share it around for 20, 25 seconds, and then we'll end up getting a great look with 3 on the shot clock. And we'll take almost the full 30 seconds. And then defensively, they do such a good job of just keeping people in front and saying, no, we're going to make you earn a shot. And they won't allow teams to create early offense. And so now the other teams are going 15, 20 seconds into the shot clock before they get a shot off. And that's one of their defining characteristic. I mean, I kind of, I'm like, hey, if they pressure you, go attack and get layups. But if they don't, just keep sucking the life out of this game and running this thing into the ground. And so it was funny, that fourth quarter to me, even though you're just never comfortable no matter how big the lead is. But the fourth quarter went really quick because every possession was taking 30 seconds. I mean, we're 4 possessions in and there's 5:15 on the clock and we're calling a timeout. And it's like, man, that happened so fast. And so, I think the girls did a fantastic job of just taking the energy out of the Gonzaga prep team in the fourth quarter. Their best player didn't take 1 shot in the fourth quarter, and the girls continued to get the ball out of her hands and not let her get it back. And again, offensively, we just held the ball and didn't take bad shots and just drain the clock, and it just happened quick, and it was absolutely awesome. But that's kind of what they do.
Meg, did you ever get a sense that, did you remember a moment when you kind of looked up at the scoreboard and you're like, okay, they got it?
Oh, I want to say it was probably when Parker Mayer's little left-handed right off the glass with, I want to say, 2:09 to go. And I'm thinking, number one, Parker went left-handed. Yeah. And secondly, I'm thinking, okay, Camas has it. And because you had built such a big lead first half, even though Gonzaga Prep 3 times cut it to within 12, they just couldn't muster it any closer. Yeah. And again, it was just kudos to how great of a defensive team you guys are. And you guys hardly ever press. That's something that we really never see from you guys too often. But just a tremendous defensive effort. Yeah, but once Parker went left and it hit, I know you guys started 0 for 8 to start the fourth quarter, but I'm thinking as soon as she hit that, that's when I knew it was ball game. Yeah,
0 for 8. And again, I kind of felt like we were getting 9s and 10s. We were draining the shot clock. Like, I feel like the game was going our way, but the baskets weren't. Whereas Gonzaga Prep was struggling to even get shots off at times in the fourth quarter. But when Parker goes down the lane and we call it a high pickup, she kind of did a high pickup with a little Parker flair to it, and then finished with the left. We thought she got bumped. We were calling for a foul, and she nails it. And it was the moment that kind of just made everybody calm. Like I said, no lead feels safe when you're in the state championship game. But Gonzaga Prep was still playing as hard as they could play. And that one just kind of put the dagger in them. And then next possession, we come down after getting a stop, and Riley hits the 3. And it just felt like it was over from that point on.
I wanted to ask too about, we mentioned the Mayer sisters, Kendall and Parker, probably will go down as some of the best athletes to ever come out of Camas High School. And basketball really is their second sport, and they have come off the bench in a supporting role for multiple years now. And both have been league MVPs in different sports in the fall. Kendall with volleyball, Parker with girls soccer. Both are going on to play college, Parker this year and Kendall next year. But what have they meant to the success of this program? Not just this year helping you win a championship, but just the last few years of helping you get to this point.
Yeah, I think every basketball team needs a Kendall and Parker. They're the ultimate parachute packers. They show up to the basketball court knowing that it's not their primary sport and just say, what can we do to help you win? And they don't care what it is. We can tell them to do anything and they will do it, whether it's set screens to get other people open, whether it's to defend the other team's best player. It just doesn't matter to them. They're in for any role or responsibility. You just got to tell them this will help us win a basketball game. And there's such incredible athletes that they can pretty much do anything required of them. And so I think you look at the magnitude of what they've done for our basketball program is everybody wants to score more points. Everybody wants to see their name in the paper. Everybody wants to be the one that generates offense for their team. Having girls like Parker and Kendall that show up and say, yeah, if it's my turn, give me the ball and I'll shoot it. But I'm not going to come out here and try to break down off the dribble and go by everybody every time I touch it. They just do things that are simple, don't make mistakes. And every team needs those. We're already loaded with players that want to generate offense. I mean, most teams have a pecking order of sorts, a 1, 2, and a 3. Not very many people have 4 players on their team that are trying to generate offense, and we've got 4. And so we need parachute packers to go on the court with them. And so when our parachute packers are maybe some of the best defenders in the state and some of the best athletes in the state, I mean, they're just really, really special kids. And so we can put them out there and they're just so detail oriented and they'll do anything it takes to help us win. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I can't imagine a version of this that we win a state championship without those two.
Parker's such a tremendous defender, and I know she fouled out. I think actually they both fouled out back-to-back possessions in the semifinal win over Sumner, but you can't get mad at Parker when a foul's called because she plays defense so well. Or maybe you can as a head coach. But watching her play is such a joy to watch. And Kendall, I don't know how many times she got popped in the mouth.
Yeah, she took a couple.
Over the three games in 3 days.
She took a couple. Yeah, it was funny. The night before, we sat down with Parker and Kendall and just said, hey, they thought they were in trouble. And I was like, hey, look, you have the freshest legs in the state tournament right now. Both of you do. And part of it is because Tahoma, we got away from them and didn't have to play the girls on high minutes. And then the next part is they both fouled out of the Sumner game in about 10 minutes. Yeah. And so they really didn't have a lot of basketball that last week. And so I said, hey, we need to ride you guys because you're going to be fresher than any of our players. And so we need big minutes out of you. So you have to stop fouling. And right in the beginning of the game, Parker goes in and picks up a foul. Yep. And I'm looking at her like, Parker, no. It was so funny. But yeah, it was great. It was great to see them, there's kind of a concept in coaching, like play so good that your coach can't take you out. My plan was to get Sophie back in for that final 3 or 4 minutes. I thought Sophie played great and she was doing great things for us. She's another awesome defender who we really needed out there. Well, Parker goes in, and my thinking is Parker's going to foul out soon because she's on 4. And so I got Parker in at about the 6-minute mark thinking, okay, I'll get her in for 2 or 3 minutes and then get Sophie back in for the stretch. Parker just absolutely went off defensively. I mean, it felt like she was guarding their whole team. She was guarding one of their players that we didn't really have as a shooter. And so she could like get off of her quite a bit. And so she was running all over the court, doubling everybody, deflecting passes, like forcing them to take bad shots. I mean, it was crazy. She was playing out of her mind and I couldn't take her off the court. Yeah. And so, and Kendall, the only way she's coming off the court that game is with a bloody nose and a bloody chin, which is how it happened. But, but yeah, they're both great.
I think the fact that you're such a good defensive team is an outgrowth of kind of the bigger theme of how everybody buys in, not for themselves as individuals, but really celebrates the team concept of it. I think I saw it mentioned that you could have 4 players that average 20 points a game, but you don't. And I think one player that I think really stands out, and that is Addie Harris. Mm-hmm. She could probably be the top scorer in most leagues around the state, but she really buys into that team concept. Just what has Addie meant to this program and what you've been able to accomplish during this amazing run over the last few years? Yeah,
I mean, Addie is just a special human being. If you know Addie, you just absolutely know her joy. Her is infectious. She's just such an amazing person. She walks into our locker room every day with a smile on her face, ready to have the greatest practice or the greatest game or the greatest day. You just can't help but get on board with just her charisma and the way she approaches life and the way she approaches basketball. she never took a day off in 4 years playing for us. She was always the first one to practice. She was always the last one to leave. I've said this multiple times, but she just never has a bad day. She's also an amazing leader. She's positive to her teammates, and I think I look at what she's done in her 4 years, and you would just expect she's got almost 1,500 points. She's got all the rebounds. She's got all the records, and she has zero ego at all. And so, we can't do this if Addie has a selfish bone in her body. She only scored 12 points in the state title game. It never even crossed our minds that would bother her. She's just a special person. And I mentioned it earlier, we've got 4 girls that generate offense. With Addie, Kira, Riley, and Reagan, they're all great playmakers that could be massive scorers in this league. All of them could be 20-point scorers. And to be honest, Addie could probably be a 30-point scorer. But if they do that, there's probably not a version of this that we win a state title. And the fact that I have 4 girls that generate offense, that's hard. That's a hard position to navigate. And it just doesn't work if any of them have a selfish bone in their body. If any of them care how many points they score, this whole thing doesn't work. And so I'm so grateful for those 4 and how they approach the game and how they approach their teammates. Because like I said, there's just no selfishness there. Nobody cares how many points they score. Nobody cares how many shots they get. They just want to win. And because of that, maybe they sacrificed a little on the state all-tournament team, but ultimately we've got a gold ball and a bunch of clippings of a net and a lot of great memories.
Yeah, I think the backcourt also plays a huge role in that with, Riley Sands and then Kira Thompson, your daughter. What's sort of their approach from the backcourt to really facilitate that and get the ball to all these different people?
Yeah. And that's the thing is I think for what we like to do offensively is we like to have our players kind of create for each other. And when you have Kira and Riley who are willing to get paint touches and move the ball, and then all of a sudden everybody's getting really good touches, and we're not even bringing up Sophie, who's a really good shooter on the perimeter that teams can't leave. And so we get Riley and Kira into the paint and they land on 2 feet and anybody gets open, it's a bucket. And so yeah, we give them a lot of freedom. We kind of have some reads and some movements, but ultimately they're out there just playing. And Riley and Kira are just so much of what we do offensively. They generate so much offense for their teammates and so many opportunities for their teammates. Everybody gets better touches, when they're getting downhill. Everybody gets better opportunities when they're getting downhill.
Yeah, it's, I think, an incredibly, this relates to the kind of team element and the passing that your group has perfected, but I think it's an incredibly attractive brand of basketball that your team plays. I wanted to kind of ask about this as kind of a bigger picture thing. You're seeing the women's game, I think, reach levels of popularity it never has before. Some of that is a transcendent player like Caitlin Clark at the college level, but I think you're also, I'm just wondering, did you see and sense some of that in the support that you got from the community, a real wider acceptance and people really buying into, the high level of women's basketball that is now being played?
Yeah, I've been coaching on the girls' side for 6 years, and every year it seems to get bigger and bigger. Even going back to when Sabrina was at University of Oregon, you started to see a little bit of a push, a little bit of movement, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Our community was amazing on Saturday night, and they were amazing all week, and they were amazing all season. Even going back into the off season, we reached out to Eastlake to see if they wanted to come down because we went to their place last year, and we were kind of trying to figure out when they, if they were going to be able to make it. And I remember telling their coach, I'm like, hey, you got to figure out how to get down here because you've got to see what our crowd brings to the table. Like, you've got to see this. If you want your girls to play in an insanely awesome atmosphere, you got to get down here. And she did. And we packed the place for that game. And our student section was phenomenal. Our band and cheer is just second to none. And the community, I mean, it's people that don't have skin in the game, that just love Camas and love the brand of basketball that we play, and they just come out and support us. And so, it was really cool. The Friday game, we weren't supposed to have a Rooter bus, and I'm not privy to find out how that happened. I really don't know. All I know is I get a text message from my AD saying, you got approved and there's a Rooter bus coming. And so I think the fear was Sumner's so close down the street that they knew Friday night Sumner was going to bring it. And so Camas was like, we've got to get a Rooter bus of kids up here to cheer these girls on. And so we ended up getting a really good crowd on Friday, and it was a little unexpected. And then Saturday was just insane. It felt like thousands. I mean, it felt like it was certainly over 2,000 Camas people were there, and they were, driving themselves up and getting there in a variety of ways. But ultimately, the support was insane. Our principal came to DC with us. Nobody ever talks about that. and I mean, we get so much support from the top down. It's so fun. It's so fun to be a part of, and it just it makes the girls feel special. It makes the whole experience better, and so it's really fun.
How loud was it, Meg?
It was pretty deafening. I got to give a shout out. Yeah, the Camas crowd. I mean, you pretty much spot on. 2,000 is about right, and they were there very early. As soon as the 4A boys game was over, they were trying to get in as quickly as possible. So it was a tremendous Camas crowd.
Yeah, and I heard some bands there too, and our band's a lot louder. It's a lot louder, and it was really, really cool. It's almost like you could tell it was Camas's band when we walked on. It was
Absolutely.
like, oh, they're here. Okay,
Yep.
Where are they? It's like they're so good.
Yeah.
I guess just to kind of wrap this up, what do you hope maybe young players in the program, maybe middle school kids that want to join the program eventually, what do you hope they look to in this year's team and see as the most valuable traits to sustain year after year after year?
I think when I look at like the Camas program and kind of some of the girls that are seniors now and juniors now, and even the strong freshman class that we have is they were all girls that came to the games and brought signs when they were in middle school and elementary school, and they've always kind of been a part of it. And now we've got girls that are in middle school and elementary school that are bringing signs for these girls and really being a part of it. And you see that, they want to kind of take after these girls, and they want to play like them. And I'm telling you, these ninth graders that came in, they look just like, the junior class when they came in as ninth graders. They look just like that senior class. They're really talented and they're really good, but they pass the ball, they share the ball, and they work together, and they have that team feel when they get on the court. And I think that's a big part of it. Our community is so supportive, and everything we do is so supportive. Well, our players are very supportive of each other, and they have a community feel in this program. I was able to bring my own daughter into this program, and I remember going back to when she was an 8th grader. My 3 stars were seniors, Caitlin, Jelena, and Faith, and they were the same way. I mean, they brought in all those 9th graders, and they were so good to them and loved them and cared about them and said, this is what we're about. And they're 4.0 students, and they're just great people. And I'm like, man, what better locker room to bring your daughter into? What better people to surround your kid with? Bunch of 4.0 students that care about each other and love each other and play together and support each other. I mean, it's a really, really cool feel in our locker room.
Well, what an amazing, story just to kind of cap off the winter season and cap off really a multi-year journey with a state title. Coach Scott Thompson, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about just how special this first program state championship is. Maybe there's another one in the future pretty soon, but no one can ever take away these memories that you and this team have made this year.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
And thank you everybody for tuning in. We will see you next week. We still got a little bit of wrap up of the winter sports season to do. In a couple of weeks, we'll be revealing the all-region basketball teams, which is always going to be a fun episode. But again, thank you, Coach Scott Thompson, for joining us, and we will see you next week.